Hey everyone. Today we're going to lighten things up and have a little fun. My last 4 videos were pretty heavy topics, so it's time for something fun and different. We're going to take a trip to Walton's Mountain, and I'm going to share with you some things about my favorite TV series, and I'm going to be sharing with you an email that was sent to me by the creator of the Waltons, Earl Hamner. He shared with me 19 years ago. It's a very interesting but sad story that I really haven't shared with anyone but my own family. But even if you're not a fan of the Waltons, I think you'll find that interesting because it's on a topic that is very relevant to our world today. And it's also a segue into my next video, which I'm going to be sharing. So within my home, you would find pretty many clues that I am a fan of the Waltons. First clue would be the entire 9-year series. Every year is on there. This was a gift from my son and his wife because they know me. And the second clue would be this book. I picked this up at a gift shop in Schuyler, Virginia, which is actually the childhood home of Earl Hamner. I picked it up from a lady who, she had a gift shop next to the Walton's Mountain Museum, so we got to talking, and she's the one who gave me Earl Hamner's email address. And the Walton's Mountain Museum is a big part of the story that I'm going to share. And then the third clue would be this book, The Homecoming. And I just noticed recently the last page of this book has the original recipe for Olivia Walton's applesauce cake and Jane's whiskey frosting. I'll probably be sharing that in another video. The Homecoming actually was the pilot for the television series The Waltons. It came out in September of 1972. I was 10 years old, and I very much remember watching that show with my family when I was 10. It was a big deal. A lot of people were talking about it afterwards. And I remember watching that show as a child, and I remember the scene that stood out to me the most. It was the scene with, they were decorating the Christmas tree, and Mary Ellen pulled she pulled a bird's nest out of a drawer, and she wanted to put it in the tree. And her siblings just thought this was a weird idea. They weren't having it, so they were telling her, "That's disgusting. There's poop on it. You can't put that in the tree." Well, Mary Ellen, being the strong-willed person that she is, she stood up for herself, and she said, "Oh, you're all just a bunch of piss ants." And as soon as she said that, Erin went and tattled to her mom that Mary Ellen's calling us piss ants. And then there was a close-up shot of Elizabeth, just the sweetest little face. She said, "I don't feel like a piss ant." So that was the scene that really stood out to me most as a 10-year-old. And I recently watched The Homecoming on YouTube. You can catch it there on YouTube. Just Google The Homecoming. And a completely different scene stood out to me as an adult, which I thought was interesting. And that was the bedroom scene between John Boy and his mother, where she came up to his bedroom and found it locked once again. And she keeps asking him, "Why you keep locking the door? What are you doing in here? Are you smoking in here?" And John Boy says, "I just want some privacy." And she just keeps asking him, "Why do you need privacy?" And she notices that the blanket on the bed is lifted up. And she says, "Are you hiding something under that mattress, John Boy?" And, you know, he very reluctantly pulled something out from under the mattress and he handed it to her. And I'm going to read exactly what he says because this is, to me, the most poetic, wonderful dialogue in that whole show. He says to her, "You know what's in that tablet, Mama? All my secret thoughts, how I feel, what I think about, what it's like late at night to hear a whippoorwill call and to hear its mate call back, the rumbling of the midnight train crossing the trestle at Rockfish, or just watching the water go by in the creek and knowing that someday it will reach the ocean and wondering if I'll ever see an ocean and what a wonder that would be. Things stay in my mind, Mama. I can't forget anything. And it all gets bottled up in here, and sometimes I just feel like a crazy man. I can't rest or sleep until I come up here and write it all down in that tablet. When I was 10 and I watched that show, I had no idea that I would become a writer. Had no idea that I would write for 2 newspapers and win awards for my writing and have a blog. And I don't say that to brag, because I know where the talent came from and I give all the glory to him. It's not me. But, I had no idea that that would be my life's work. And so as a writer myself, I can very much relate to the character of John Boy, and I can very much relate to what he's saying here, because, I'm always writing in my head. I'm always thinking and writing, and it can tend to, it gives me a hard time to focus on things sometimes, like even conversations with people. I'll be writing in my head, and I have to force myself to focus on what they're saying. So I understand what he's saying here. And, the character of John Boy, he's a very sensitive soul, and writers are often very sensitive to the world around them. They notice things that other people overlook, and they can see what other people are feeling, and like their emotions, their body language, their tone of voice, their facial expressions. We pick up on all of that and we notice it. And I just love the character of John Boy because I can see myself in him. I guess that's why. Plus, it's a show about, morals and values and family and all those wonderful things that seem to have dissolved over the years for the most part. So, well, not everyone appreciates John Boy's sensitivity. I have a funny story about a Facebook repost that I did. There was a birthday tribute for Richard Thomas, who played John Boy, showed up on my news feed on Facebook, and I reposted it, and one of my Facebook friends made a comment on it that just, I literally did laugh out loud, because it was so funny, and I'll tell you why it was funny. He said, yeah, John Boy, he couldn't shoot a turkey at Thanksgiving and has left his family go hungry. I thought that was funny because so many times I'm watching the show and my husband will walk by and he'll roll his eyes and he'll say, are you watching that sissy John Boy again who couldn't shoot a turkey and left his family go hungry on Thanksgiving? Oh, I have cooked many wild turkeys that my husband brought home, my hunter husband. So it must be a guy thing. You're not a man if you can't shoot a turkey. So, I understand, I understand the guy thing and the hunting. I'm not against hunting, but I don't see John Boy's sensitivity as a weakness. I see it as a strength. I think it's cool that he didn't want to inflict pain on an animal, that he couldn't do it. So, he's sensitive. And I think that ability to feel things very deeply is part of what made him a great writer. I guess I should say part of what made Earl Hamner a great writer, because the character of John Boy is actually portraying many of the aspects of the real life of Earl Hamner and his upbringing as a child, growing up with his siblings in Schuyler, Virginia. And I'm not sure that I'm saying that right, Schuyler. There's a CH in there and a U, but that's how I'm going to say it. Which takes me to my next topic, the email that I received from Earl Hamner. This email was sent to me more than 19 years ago, but the lesson within what he shared, it's very relevant to our world today, and that's why I'm sharing it. First, I'll say I've corresponded with 2 famous people. Kim Alexis, I wrote her a letter. She was a supermodel in the 1980s. She was on every magazine cover of that decade. And she wrote a book that I liked, and I wrote a letter to her complimenting her on that, and she sent me a card and a picture of her family. Very nice words in it. And Earl Hamner, the gift shop owner, had given me his email, and he sent a response, and I was just blown away by this, that this busy man would take the time to do that. So I'm going to talk about that, and we had just returned from a Virginia vacation when I wrote to Earl Hamner after I had visited the Walton's Mountain Museum. I had learned some disturbing news from the lady who ran the gift shop. She knew Earl Hamner, like I said, and she knew the happenings of that community because she was right there. The gift shop was very close to the Walton's Mountains Museum. So she told me a very sad story of selfishness and greed and hatred and things that had brought about changes to the museum over the years. And the reason I was so disturbed by that is it depicted the exact opposite of what Earl Hamner had brought into our living rooms for 9 years. Because the Waltons, it's a beautiful story about, a close family with traditional Christian values who, they live in this loving community where they have kind neighbors who look out for each other. And that museum, the Walton's Mountain Museum, that was meant to be a place that celebrated all those good things. And I had planned our Virginia vacation around a trip to the museum. So I was quite shocked to hear about all this negative information about it. And when I contacted Earl Hamner, he sent me several pages explaining what had taken place. And, it was just, what happened was so bad that it caused him to avoid his childhood home and to pull some of his things out of the museum, his scripts and, the things that he contributed to them. He pulled it out, and it also caused his brother to eventually sell their childhood home and move away. That's how bad this thing that happened was. His brother Jim had been working as a representative for the museum because Earl couldn't be there. He was busy with other things in other areas of, the country. And so he was threatened with physical harm and called names and told to resign. And he was even accused of trumped up charges that he ended up being acquitted from. So a lot of bad things happened to his brother. And what happened was the management of the museum fell into the hands of outsiders. I don't know how that happened, but even a few locals were involved that started paying themselves some hefty salaries. And some bad decisions were made at the museum. And it affected the way Earl Hamner wanted that museum to be portrayed. And it also affected his brother Jim's health and his reputation and his peace of mind because he had to move away from the stress of it all. The stress of the museum people, as Earl Hamner referred to them in his email. So in a nutshell, the museum, which was designed to be a center for family values and a place where people could go and hear guest lectures on family life, and they could attend reunions with the cast of the show and some of the guest stars of the show, and it all became a mockery of what Earl Hamner's vision for the museum was. Now, a lot of this stuff could have been corrected. There are still good things there. I don't want to deter anyone from going. Like, for example, there's still a recreation of the sets of the show, the kitchen and John Boy's bedroom and the living room. There's recreation of those sets, and there's also clothes on display like that Mary Ellen wore and that Aaron wore on the show. And there's also a recreation of Ike Godsey's store there, which is also a gift shop. So there's still good things to see there. I don't want to deter anyone from going, but I wanted to get an update on the museum. So I asked she's the third person that actually corresponded with me. Mary Ellen, Judy Norton, who played Mary Ellen, she has a YouTube channel where she goes behind the scenes of different episodes of the show, and she shares interesting facts about each episode and things that you wouldn't know just by watching the show. She also interviews some of the regular cast members of the show as well as some of the guest stars on the show, and she answers fans' questions. So I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. I'll ask Judy if she can give me any information about the museum. And she actually responded to me very quickly. So, like I said, don't assume that busy, famous people don't read their mail and correspond and actually reply to their mail. So she gave me this response, which I'm going to read. She said that there was a point where some folks connected with the museum caused an upset with Earl in regards to his family. So in support of Earl, the cast declined invitations to attend museum gatherings. Currently, there still seems to be some sort of conflict between the various factions on the mountain, the museum, the bed and breakfast, the Hamner store, not the Hamner house, and the store. And she's referring to Ike Godsey's store, which there's actually two Ike Godsey stores. There's a recreation in the museum, and there's also the original place where Ike Godsey's store stood, which is still a store, and that's what she's referring to here. She said, I'm not clear on all the internal politics, but it makes it more difficult to do harmonious gatherings, I suspect. It has never been about the cast's unwillingness to attend gatherings, but we aren't the ones who originate and organize them. For many years, we predominantly attended events on the mountain, and most recently, we have chosen to do events in areas that we haven't been before because we wanted to give fans in other areas a chance to attend events closer to where we live. And that is a quote from Judy Norton, who played Mary Ellen. And I do know that there was a 45th anniversary celebration at the Walton's Mountain Museum in 2017. Earl Hamner died in 2016, and the 2017 45th anniversary celebration, which was 45 years from when the show aired in 1972. It was also a tribute to Earl and his life's work. And I know that some of the cast members did attend that. So there's still good things happening at the Walton's Mountain Museum. I don't want to downplay it or deter anyone from going to see it. I'm not sharing this to give it a bad name. I'm sharing this to give it as an example of how evil can creep into some things that are so good. And, when that happens, it just ruins things. It ruins things for more people than you think it might. This happened 19 years ago, and I think the moral decay of our world is far worse now. I'm sure you'd agree with that. Just look around. You might be experiencing, that hostility with people or at work or, wherever. You just sense there's something wrong. People are they're not nice. And this thing happened 19 years ago, as I said, and it affected an entire world of fans. Russia and China are the only two countries where the Waltons are not seen on television. So anyone who wanted to go visit the museum, the changes that took place because of the museum people, as Earl Hamner referred to them, it affected a lot of people. So, and this is a segue into my next video, actually. I'm going to be talking about that. There's actually scripture in the Bible that describes the world we live in today. And, I'll get into that in my next video. That's why I shared this, to, share with you that when you're selfish and when you think only of yourself and you do things out of your own selfish gain, you affect a lot of people. And, I'm going to talk about that more in my next video. So I hope you'll check back for that. And thanks for sticking around to the end. Thanks for hanging out with me and sharing my Walton's love, and hope you have a good week. Thanks for watching.